Hello, this is the luckiest maths teacher in the world. Thank you so much for tuning into this video on theoretical probability. So here, we're actually going to find out how we calculate probabilities. So we use this formula here when all outcomes are equally likely to occur. This formula says the probability of an event is the number of ways it can occur over the total number of outcomes. What we're calculating here is theoretical probability. The answer we get will usually be a fraction, and that is the fraction of times that we expect something will happen. So let's look at an example. So let's say I roll a normal 8-sided die. So normal just means that the faces are labeled 1 to 8. So what I'm listing here is the sample space, the list of possible outcomes. So for an 8-sided die, there are 8 possible outcomes. So this notation here means the probability of. So this is saying the probability I roll a 5. Well, there's 1 5. There's one way I can roll a 5. So 1 goes on top. There are 8 outcomes in total, so 8 goes on the bottom. So the probability of rolling an even number, I have to say how many ways can that occur? Well, to get an even number, I could get a 2, a 4, a 6, or an 8. There are 4 ways it can occur out of 8 outcomes in total. Now, it doesn't matter whether you write probabilities as a fraction or a decimal, but if you write it as a fraction, it should be simplified. 4 over 8 simplifies to a half, and yes, you can write it as a decimal, 0.5. So, if I want to know the probability that I roll a multiple of 3, I have to first figure out how many ways that can happen. So, to get a multiple of 3, I can either roll a 3 or a 6. There are 2 ways I can roll a multiple of 3 out of 8 in total. Once again, if you write it as a fraction, it should be simplified. It is also okay to write as a decimal. All right, the last one says the probability that the number I roll is less than 6. So how many ways can that occur? Well, 1 is less than 6, so is 2, 3, 4, and 5. 6, however, is not less than 6, so we don't include that. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ways that I can roll a number less than 6 out of 8 in total. So again, you can write probabilities as a fraction or a decimal. So what do these numbers mean? So, for example, the probability of getting a 5 is 1 over 8. That means if I roll this normal 8-sided die over and over and over again, I expect that I will roll a 5 1/8 of the time. Another way to look at this is that I expect that every 8 rolls, I'll get 1 5. This probability here means I expect that the die will land on an even number half of the time. Every second roll, I expect to get an even number. The probability of getting a multiple of 3 is a quarter, so I expect every 4th roll I will get a multiple of 3. If I roll this die over and over again, I expect that 1/4 of the time I will land on a multiple of 3, and so on. So you can calculate the number of times we expect something to happen by simply multiplying the probability by the number of trials. So if I spin the spinner to the right 60 times, how many times would I expect to land on an even number? So here, despite my drawing, all 5 of these are supposed to have the same area. So each of these 5 outcomes is equally likely. So first we need to figure out the probability of landing on an even number. Well, there are 3 ways I can land on an even number out of 5 in total. The probability of landing on an even number is 3 over 5. So I expect that 3/5 of the time, this spinner will land on an even number. Or in other words, out of every 5 spins of this spinner, I expect 3 of them will land on an even number and 2 on an odd number. So if I roll this spinner 60 times, I would expect that it will land on an even number 3/5 of those 60 times. But hopefully you remember from when we did fractions, of just means times. So this is just 3/5 times 60, and you can use your calculator for that, you get 36. So if I spin this spinner 60 times, I expect it'll land on an even number 36 times and an odd number 24 times. All right, thank you so much for tuning into this video. This has been the luckiest maths teacher in the world. Have a great day.